Hey, welcome back to the table. So we're going to do the first scenario, RS1, morning recon. I just determined that it really is the scenario that's meant for noobs like ourselves. I've never played this game ever, so you're experiencing this for the first time. So let me get some of the caveats out of the way. Now, first of all, this video is going to be just the setup for this scenario. If you're looking for playthrough, go to the next video, which of course doesn't exist yet, but it will soon. Secondly, I will play the game, and I have software that's better than I had in years past whenever I've made videos like this. So I can, like if I need to look something up in the rules, I can always pause the video. I usually announce it, because sometimes I fail to pause. But by pausing the video, that will cut out a lot of the white space or the dull time. And I'm going to get some rules wrong, probably. And that's the thing, though, about this channel, is a lot of the folks who are regular viewers, they join and they help out and they talk about it, they ask questions. That's what this is about. I mean, it sounds a little selfish of me, but it actually helps me to learn and get better. With that said, I'm going to try my best not to screw up, but I know I will. And this game has a lot of moving parts to it. On the surface, it doesn't seem like it's all that bad. It's just that there's 100 caveats, and you know, there's a player aid that has rules written on that. There's 3 different rule books. I mean, one of them's a scenario book, another one's a appendices book, but there's rules in each one. And a perfect example is the appendices book is the only book that explained to me what the heck this means. Right here. This 1 times brace 2. So the 2 in the brace symbols. 1 times 2. What the heck does that mean? The only book I found that answer in was the appendices book, which is the last book I would expect to find it in. I'm sure it's somewhere in the rule book. I just can't find the location for it. But in case it's burning at your soul, what does the 1 times 2 mean? What this means is that there's going to be 1 flight, which means 1 token, right? 1 token on the board, but there's going to be 2 planes within that token. So they're basically a pair. So a pair of planes are going to be identified. I mean, it's exactly what you see here. So you see a picture of 2 planes with the question mark. There's literally 2 represented by this 1 chit. And they fly together. One of them can be shot down and the other one can keep going. Now remember, this particular scenario, we're going to get into some of the details. It's impossible to get shot down in this one because everything is dummy weapons. Like, there is no actual weapons being used on either side. But we'll get into some of that real quick. So let's just start at the top and work our way through. This game, just like every other game that has these separate scenario books, I mean, whether it's the coin game like GMT, if there was one thing I could sit down with their guys and rattle them a little bit, is they put stuff in their setup notations and expect you to just know it. And it's really annoying, and they do it in every game. I think they need to put a little bit more care into that. But to be quite honest, these GMT game books, even though they're lengthy, they're maybe a little lacking in examples. They're at least good. And the errata I printed out is only a single sheet, and most of the ones I read seem trivial. So anyways, just wanted to say I'm not poo-pooing GMT too much. Okay, so the background here is there's a morning recon. After months of increasing tension, the inter-German border, Warsaw Pact commanders expect to receive the word to start combat operations at any time. Warsaw Pact air commanders authorize high-speed reconnaissance flights excuse me, across the border, pilots are ordered to get in quickly, gather intel, and get back. Okay, so this particular mission, we're going to play schizophrenic, meaning we're playing both sides. This is not a solitaire mission. There's no solitaire bot on this particular mission. So the Russians have a mission to do recon. So that's their goal. And then the NATO side, which is going to be Britain, they have, basically, they're trying to intercept. And so we have, so we have a Phantom FGR-2 versus the Su-24 MR Fencer. I don't know my MiGs or SUs very well. I do know the American ones a bit more. And then, of course, the British variant, I'm not familiar with at all. I know what a Phantom is, but that's about it. Okay, none of that's here or there. So what they have is they have the targets. So these are the 4 targets that the Russians need to find. So the Russian player has to get to all 4 of those places. Now, over here in the special rules, because there's an actual recon mission in the rulebook, we're ignoring that. And I'll show you, it's one of these special rules over here. But just to give you a brief sneak peek into that, detection, I'm sorry, the ability to recon this, all the Russians have to do is fly within 1 hex of the location and take their picture. So they're basically just taking pictures. So it's a little different than what you see in the rulebook. So the rulebook's a little more elaborate in terms of what a recon mission has to do. This one's a lot more simplified. Okay. Also, I know this is another sneak peek. Here we go. Let me show you right here. So there's 15 turns in this scenario. The Warsaw Pact Photo and Electronic Recon, they must follow a flight path. The path must allow them to fly within 1 hex of each of the 4 hexes, the targets, at medium or lower altitude in order for them to take their picture. It does not have to conduct actual recon runs, which is the rulebook thing I was telling you about. It just needs to move within 1 hex. And then it has us ignoring a bunch of random events. And then it's telling us that the anti-air concentrations at Hochster, Ballenstedt, and Kochstedt must remain inactive during the scenario. So we'll do that in a second. We'll set that up. In fact, I got to find the tokens for that. But let's continue to talk about the game board. You know, where's things happening? Where's all the action? Well, I know I'm jumping around the scenario book here, but as you can tell, this entire thing is the game map. It's huge, folks. Absolutely huge. I think this is one of the largest maps I've ever played on, and how tiny these hexes are. But with that being said, see those little red tokens? Those red tokens are the western edge of where the Russians can fly. Sorry, my camera is being a little shaky here. That's the western edge of where the Russians can fly. So the Russians can't go any further to the west. Okay? And then see, there's those tokens. Sorry. See these tokens there and there? That is the front line. So, let me zoom back out. So this is the front line of where West Germany and East Germany begin and end. Okay? So the map portion that we're going to use is from there. So it's basically the top right corner. Okay? All of this is out of play. So the really good news is we can get our rule books out and just lay them right here on the table. I mean, I'm going to be stretching across my table the whole time, but that part's good. The other thing is I got this off of Board Game Geek. They have this thing, which is very valuable. So basically, we have an FGR, which is an F4 Phantom, British. And so what I do is I can represent, see, because like they're going to start the game at deck level altitude. How do I know this? I'm jumping ahead a little bit. But all the status of our two planes, the group, you know, this one chit, can be represented here. And you can see there could be 1, 2, 3, 4 planes in that group. So by placing this like so, we're going to have 2 planes on the mission. These 2, you could just put a big X over them if you wanted, because they're not in the mission. And then, of course, if they get destroyed, damaged, and I can't remember what the CR stands for, but all the different statuses and the ordnance and everything, you can keep track of it right here on this sheet. It's a very well done sheet. Otherwise, you're putting this little altitude marker along with the other marker on the board. And it gets to be a bit much to have all these tokens on the board. Okay, so I'm going to just leave this sort of here because we're going to reference this often. But let's, rather than jumping around, let's go in order here and set up the rest of the scenario. So the 4 recon targets you can see there's 2 Hawk batteries, an HQ, and a supply. So I took the time before I hit record to actually be prepared. And so this is a Hawk battery. So we have 2 of those. Okay, we have an HQ. And we have a supply. All right. The other thing it says is our rear area units of the Belgian 16th Armored Division. So I grabbed an Armored Division, but I don't know if I actually put that on the board or not. But anyways, we're going to find out very soon. So let's zoom out a bit, and I'm going to be referencing these hex numbers here, but these are the locations where these start. So let's do these. And I'm going to put them in the order that we're going to experience them. All right, and then starting at the top, 5303 gets a Hawk battery. So I'm going to go all the way up here. My eyes are awful. But basically, this is the 5300 column, and 5303 is going to be way near the top. So way up here, near the top, is a Hawk battery. And then the next one, 5404, is the HQ. So 5404 is the HQ. And then supply is at 4904. So we gotta go all the way back here to 4904. And then a Hawk battery at 5308. So 5308. And that's the 4 targets. So let me zoom you up a little bit more so you can see better. All right, so the western edge that the Russians can fly is this column here. And you're gonna see this orbit point here. I got a little ahead of myself. This is where our planes, they're already launched, if you will, and that's their orbit point. And we'll talk about that in a second. Okay, but so the 4 targets that the Russians need to get are right there, and they're not very far from each other. So the Russians need to fly within 1 space of every one of those guys. So we do happen to have 2 Hawks here, which will be interesting. Okay, so let's jump into the scenario conditions. First condition is it's May 12th, 1987. I don't know if that makes a lick of difference, so I'm ignoring that for now. It's 10:30. The daytime part is the only part I care about, and that just means it's easy. There's more rules if it's night. The detection level is NATO A and Warsaw Pact A. Now this does make a difference for whenever you're trying to detect enemies. The detection level dictates like whether it's easier or harder. And I believe A means it's really good. I could be wrong. So what you do is you have this NATO detect and you put it on A. And then the Warsaw Pact has a Warsaw Pact detect. It also goes on A. So basically, and it could theoretically move up and down. And we start on turn 1. And then we're obviously starting at the first phase when we start the game, but we haven't started yet. But the first phase is the random event phase, which, by the way, is skipped on turn 1. But that would still be the first phase. Okay, the weather is clear. If the scenario doesn't say what the weather is, you would roll in the weather table. So we don't have to do that. That's the thing with this scenario. There's going to be a lot of stuff we're going to skip. So when we go do our next scenario, there'll be a whole bunch of stuff that we got to skip the first time. We're not going to get to skip this time. But that's okay. It's part of learning, right? The map. Only the hexes on north of hex row XX10 and on east of column 39XX are in play. It's a bit of a tongue twister, but if you look here at the map, okay, so we're looking at this thing. The columns go all the way down. So this is the 39 column. Zoom in for you there. So it's like 3950, 3949. So what they're saying is the 39 column is the furthest west it goes. So everything to the east of 39 is in, which is pretty darn close to the red. The red are on the 43 column. And in case you haven't figured it out yet, it's 36, 37, 38, 39, 40, 41, 42, 43. Like the hexes are numbered in ascending order going this way. And the first 2 digits are the column, right? And then it goes from 1 all the way down to 50, or 53, it looks like. So it's 53 hexes, 1 at the top, 53 at the bottom. And then the final 2 digits is going to be the final 2 digits is 1 at the top, 53 at the bottom. The first 2 digits is 00 on the far left and 77 on the far right. So there's 77 columns and by 53 rows, if you will. Okay. So then it's saying that it's north of 10. So what that means is, remember how I said this goes down to 53? Well, that means everything in this game is north of 10. So right now I have this here on the 19, so I can move it all the way up to 10, and that's really the play area. So it's this little box. It goes straight across, and then this front here is not the edge, that's just the front, meaning that you're into Warsaw Pact territory if you keep going. But that goes to 10 as well. So it's a very narrow corridor that the action. So the Russian player can't like do this big swing around and then try to come up this way. You know, it's going to be pretty jam-packed. Okay. So that's the portion of the map that's active. And yes, they give us these little tokens that you can put on there to remind yourself. I really do appreciate that part because I hate having to look up that stuff over and over again. Okay, so then it says the front, and that's what I just showed you. The NATO side is on the west of 6302 to 6309 to 6010. Oh, I see, 6309 to 6010. So let's... So right now, 6309 is this one, and then 6010 is that one. So what this is saying is that the front goes straight down and then it cuts over. And remember, the map is limited to 10, so it doesn't go any further south than this. So there's just this one hex that belongs to them, I guess, maybe 2. It's a little corny, but it's still good practice, right? To try to figure out how all this works. Now, I have a whole bunch of tokens here. So, for example, we can, if we really want to, we can fill it all in. I don't know how exciting that is to do, but like if we're really confused, right, we can do that. But what I think what it's meant to do is just, you know, this arrow points to this arrow points to that one, and then this is pointing back to show that that is the full front. You know, and you're basically just wherever the pivots are, that's where you put the token. And if somebody else has a better idea of how this is supposed to work, please mention it. I mean, that to me is just what makes sense. And like I said, the map corridor is very, very narrow here. Okay, closed airfields is none. So what that means is everywhere you see an airfield, it's open. I don't think that's going to matter much in this game, but it does matter in some scenarios to be able to do that properly. Next. Inherent AAA IR SAM coverage. None. So I don't know. So actually, I'll read straight from the rule book here. Some scenarios have a zone of hexes around the front where enemy flights at lower deck are automatically attacked once during their movement phase by the inherent NATO Gepard or 2K22 attack. The scenario specifies if such a zone exists and on which side of the front the zone is in effect. So you will have to do an inherent attack. So there isn't one. And then ISR is the side or sides that will roll in the ISR table. And what is ISR, you might ask? I have no idea. Let's look it up. They do have a glossary of terms in the front, which actually has been very, very helpful. And I flip back to it many times. ISR stands for Intelligence, Surveillance, and Reconnaissance. So basically our ability to see, you know, where they're located, stuff like that. So neither player has that, which makes sense. This is a recon mission. We're just starting that. Okay, SEAD. That SEAD is also neither player. And that's who gets to roll on the seed table during the seed phase. And I don't remember what SEAD stands for, but I can tell you that it's like, basically it's the enemy's ability to cripple your radar before the mission starts. Like they did some kind of pre-raid, you know, kind of thing. So just jumping back to the glossary, it's a suppression of enemy air defenses. So there you go. That's what it stands for. Suppression enemy air defenses. I will not remember that, but I do at least remember what it's supposed to mean. Okay, early warning. Neither player rolls. All flights set up undetected. So I talked about this a little bit in the introduction. I screwed it up a little bit. So a detected flight is going to look like this with the symbol, and then an undetected flight looks like this with the question mark. Now the named pilot has an actual SU-24 written on there. So just because you detect a flight doesn't mean you know that it's an SU-24. So they give you these little tokens that are undetected and detected, but it just says RR. So what that means is it's a detected flight. You know that there's something there, but you still don't necessarily know what kind of plane it is. And so that's what these tokens are meant to represent. And so you're going to see both of them in action in this scenario. All right, so the NATO air defense zone is 2 ATAF. Okay, this took me a little bit to figure out, but once I found it on the board, it was like, oh, duh. So there's this dashed blue line you're seeing going across the map. And right here, you can see it's written 2 ATAF and 4 ATAF. So 2 ATAF is anything north of the dashed blue line. And so basically, it's another way of slicing up the map. And you can't go into the 4 ATAF zone. NATO can't. So that's like our southern border. Okay, which I don't think is too big of a deal, because if the actual map itself is limited to just that corridor, we're nowhere near those dash lines. So it's a bit silly, but you know, they had to answer it, and they did. So that is the NATO air defense zone. NATO restrictions. The NATO cap flight must remain within 1 hex of the orbit point, unless a Warsaw Pact flight has been detected and is in a hex in the NATO side of the front. So a couple of conditions there. And the orbit point, I was like, well, what the hell's an orbit point? It's basically a point where the NATO planes are just circling, if you will, because they're waiting, patrolling. I don't know what the right word is. It's an orbit point. It does have a specific location. We'll talk about that when we get there. If you remember the map when I showed it to you, you actually got to see it. But basically, our NATO pilot, remember we have the Phantom. So the Phantom has to be within 1 space of that orbit point and is not allowed to leave those spaces, or not allowed to go beyond 1 space until we actually detect something on the radar. Which makes sense. That's a really cool thematic way of managing the game. I find that to be simple and brilliant. I don't know if I'm running out of fuel. We'll talk about that in a bit. But basically, it does lead to a boring start. But we'll see. Okay, and then the Warsaw Pact zone limit. The Warsaw Pact flight may not voluntarily move west of 43XX. And that was those red markers that I put up there for you. So that's the Warsaw Pact can't go west of that. And I use the red markers. I don't think that's what they were meant to be for, but they remind me of Russia, you know, red Soviet Union, and that's their border. It's not ours. In fact, you're going to see we start actually to the west of those with our plane. Okay, the rules of engagement. The NATO side may not attack the Warsaw Pact Recon flight in this scenario in any way. Instead, they have a list of other tasks they have to complete, and we'll get into those. We talked about them in the introduction. And then the setup order, NATO is first. And all that means is, because remember, this is a 2-player game, it means that we place our stuff down first, and then when Russia places their stuff down, they get to see, you know, where we are at. And that'll make more sense when you get into this order of battle stuff. So the order of battle is basically what do we have? So we have a 1 flight times 2. So that's this guy. We have 1 flight here. There's 2 planes in that flight. And that's represented by this. Okay, and if you remember, it said that everybody starts undetected. So I couldn't find a British one, so I'm using an American one. But the undetected is going to look like this. So we're basically got a 501 with a question mark. So that's going to be how we start. We're going to start with this chit on the board. The Russians don't know what kind of plane this is. Now, if you're a 2-player game and you read this scenario setup, you can see we have 1 FGR2 and that's it. So surprise, surprise, I wonder which one this is. But we're going to play it like as if we didn't know. And, you know, because this is getting us into the right habit for whenever there's, 16 planes on the board instead of just this one. But yes, we only have 1, and that's going to be represented by this guy. All right. It's going to be in cap, which I don't necessarily know or appreciate what that means. I mean, it's obviously combat air patrol. I get that part. But I don't know, like, rules-wise, what that means to start the game in cap. But I think we'll figure it out as we go, because the rules will mention it if it applies to a situation. And I think it also might be what modifies some of the modifiers. Like if you're in cap, it might modify your radar detection, things like that. Okay, so it says aggression value +1. Now, what's interesting is like this thing talks about. There is a section called aggression. Oh, where is it? So there's an aggression section up here at the top, and then there's a starting aggression, which is what it's in here somewhere. But basically, the starting aggression, we would put a 1, and that would just indicate that we have extra aggression. So what does the aggression mean? I can't tell you with definitive certainty, but I'm pretty sure based on my understanding to this point is that, higher aggression is going to make it easier for you to engage in combat and not, fail a morale check and, basically to have the cojones to do something. And what I really should be doing is I should quit being cheap with my paper and I should start writing on this with a pen. And maybe we will once we get into this. I'm still learning how to do it myself. Okay. So the aggression of +1 means exactly that. It's going to have extra aggression, and there is an aggression number. I'm pretty sure there's an aggression number written on here somewhere. I just don't know which one it is. Because they're going to have like a natural number. So I'll figure that out. The other thing is the player aid that comes with this. For example, the Phantom FGR. Oh, nope, it doesn't have a. Okay, we'll figure that out, even if I have to pause and look it up later. But just bear in mind that we have an aggression of +1. And so you can see right here, it says set up adjacent to the NATO orbit point at deck altitude, and then the orbit point is exactly in 4307. So what we got to do is take this, and I didn't know like what to do. Like, do I put it in the back so that way, we can circle around like this while we're moving? Because you can't just sit still and pass. Planes don't just hover in place. Or, do we get aggressive and put it all the way out front, facing so it's ready to just, chomping at the bit like a dog on a leash, on a chain, just, somebody just walked in the yard. I don't know which is the right move. We're going to go ahead and do this and not lose sleep over it. Okay. Then it says, for the ground setup, here we go. 15th through 17th May locations, roll for Gepard capability, the BE 16th Armored Division. So that gets set up somewhere, and I get to choose where. That's interesting. It does say that this stuff is behind the Armored Division. So I don't know, like am I supposed to put it up near the front line? It says 15th or 17th May locations, roll for Gepard capability. It's May 12th right now, so we do have to keep track of the day. That is going to be an issue. Gepard capability, I don't know exactly what that is. I think that's Antiair. So yeah, we got to put this somewhere. So, gosh, I have no idea where to put it. But this is part of the game, right, where we get to choose first before the Russians. And so I would say let's put it near the front line somewhere, right? And so I'm going to go ahead and just put it right here on the mountain for lack of a better thing to do. Okay. So I have no idea what kind of impact that has to the game. Then we have some air defense units. So it has 2 Hawk Cs, and it says 5303, 5308. We already set that up over here. That's this chart. But then we have one EWR that's in 4706. That is new. So I'm going to zoom you out a little bit. The EWR looks like this. And of course that's a radar station. That's not a surface-to-air missile. It's just a pure radar station. And it's at 4706. So let's figure out where that is. This stretching across the table is awful. So 4706, you can see these are our units here. This is the 47 column. 876 is right there. So that's how it's shaping up. So we got the 4 recon spots are all up front and the radar station's behind them. And then our orbit point's behind that. And then of course the tank is all the way up near the front line. So that's what we're setting up. And that says NATO pilot quality. This is where it will tell you if you have ace pilots, whatever. It's not applicable to this mission because we don't actually resolve the combat. So fine. Now, the Warsaw Pact gets to set up. So they get one Su-24MR. So that is represented here. It's Pravik. Okay, so I got him on the sheet. And then, of course, he's going to be represented this because he's undetected. Okay, his aggression value is +2. And he's in recon mode, which, again, I don't know what the... I mean, obviously, that's his role in this mission, is recon, whereas the other one's role is combat air patrol. I mean, maybe that's all the more it matters, but he's the recon guy. Aggression value +2. He has to enter within 1 hex of 7706 on turn 1. Okay, so there's a starting point that he has to enter. So let me see if I can find a token to represent that. Okay, I couldn't find any actual tokens. We'll just use another orbit point. And so it says 7706 on turn 1. So let's go ahead and mark 7706 over here. And I just found another thing of chits, but yeah, none of those seem to help me. So 77, that's 71, 2, 3, 4, 5. 77 is the furthest. Whoops, my camera's getting ready to fall over. 77 is this furthest to the right column. And 7706 is this one right here. So it's got to start there on turn 1. That's where he's got to enter. And that's fine. We can do that. All right. And then the next thing it says is 2 dummy flights. So he's going to have his primary, and then there's 2 dummies. And we're not going to know which one's which in a 2-player game. However, this is where the game gets a little, I don't know, I don't want to say wonky, but it's not, so this is called Limited Solitaire Rules. I'm just going to read from the rule book here. It allows player to play both sides of a scenario by switching roles back and forth, the schizophrenic way. They remove the numerous fog of war concealment aspects of the base rules. It provides an excellent way to learn the game. And since almost all the game works exactly the same, you should just do what makes sense for each side, which, fine, we're going to do that. So the rules that are not used in limited solitaire play. The generic flight counters, which are these. These are the generic flight counters. You don't use them because we already know who's who and whether they're detected or not detected. I mean, I'm going through this elaboration because I'm trying to teach myself and you guys like how it's supposed to be, full rules. But if you're playing both sides, you don't even use these. You just, we know that it's Mr. Pravik and he's undetected right now, and that's all you have to do. But these are the generic counters that you're supposed to use if it was a real 2-player game. So we'll go ahead and continue to use the generic counter because I just want to teach myself. I mean, I don't care if I teach you guys. No, I really just want to reinforce like how this works, how the different counters work. But just for your edification, you don't need them. And in fact, you can just, if you're planning on playing this game solitaire the whole time, just put all these in a baggie and set them aside because you'll never use them. Okay, the next one is the reason I'm reading this rule to you, the dummies. There are no dummies in solitaire. So these two dummy tokens wouldn't be used because whoever obviously I know who the right one is and which ones are the dummies. So it's sort of silly to pretend that I don't know. But in a real two-player game of this scenario, that player would actually have 3 of these that would enter the map. 2 of them are fake. They look like planes, but once you detect them, they'll just disappear. That's how it works in the game. So if you detect a dummy, then it just gets removed from the game. So basically, you succeeded in detecting that nothing was there. And then, of course, that helps you, through process of elimination, figure out which one is the correct plane. Okay, that's some of it. Now, also, if you end up getting the correct plane, then you know the other 2 are dummies. That's the other way, right? You can figure it out. But in solitaire rules, these 2 dummies aren't supposed to exist. But for this game, we're going to leave them in. We're going to play full 2-player schizophrenic. Okay, hidden AAA, which doesn't exist in this game. But if there was hidden Antiair, that would be out. The dummy SAMs, which are not in this game, but those would be out. The dummy radars, same deal. So anything dummy, really. I mean, if we get rid of all the dummies, I shouldn't be playing, but somebody's got to man the ship. Any hidden SAMs, and then SAM warning markers. So all of the things that would be considered hidden information, basically, are out. And by the way, when we play the full solitaire mission, there's no dummies in those either. So I think that the scenarios are going to be more balanced for solitaire. Whereas these ones, I think, are designed for full 2 players. But if you do want to solitaire them, where you play both sides, you can. It's going to be a little watered down. That's what I was trying to get at. Is it's not going to be as full. I think it's pretty cool that the Russian player gets to fool you for a while. So we'll try it. But anyways, I just wanted to make sure you understood that. And then the last thing is they're going to have an EWR. So this is the Russian EWR. The Russian has the more reddish color in 6502. So again, I never paid attention to where that is. So let's come up here and figure out where 6502 is. We know it's somewhere on the far right. It'll be to the right of the front line. Oh my gosh, it's right on the front line. 6502 is way up there to the north. Okay, so what we have here is there's our orbit point, there's our EWR, there's the 4 recon targets, our tank, the front line, their EWR, and then that's where they're going to enter the map. Does that make sense? That is a full setup of the game. These 3 are going to be the regular plane and the 2 dummies. I'm just going to set them off near that orbit point. They'll enter the game on turn 1. Okay, so special scenario rules. We went through most of this already. The AAA at these 3 locations are inactive, so they won't fire. So let me get those tokens right now. Okay, so you'll see I found some tokens here, and remember how I have those 2 red tokens there to show the western edge? They actually give you 4, because remember the map is a square, right? It's more of a rectangle, but look, I just noticed this just now, or while I was on pause there. Oh, sorry. See the little border? This is the lower left corner. So they give you the corners, so you can this would be the two lower corners of the map, and then the two I have on the board are the upper corners. So in order to correct this, my lower left corner would go here. This one is the upper left corner, so it goes here. And then this looks like a typo, but the lower right corner would be there to show that that's the edge of the map. And then this guy would just go up here. So there you go. That's our map square. So that's the borders of our play area. Okay, so now what I found is I found these tokens that say flak inactive. Because the AAA, that's what they do, is they shoot flak. They don't shoot actual missiles. And so it said that Hawkster 4505, 7306, and 7503. So Hawkster is going to be over here somewhere. Ah, yes. So Hawkster is this guy. So that little, see the little L? See that L there next to Hawkster? That's an anti-air that's built into the map. It's always there. It's inactive. So that's why we're covering that up. So that's on the Allied side, but I think there's some on the Soviet side here, because the next one, Kostedt and Ballenstedt, which are way over here. So Ballenstedt and Kostedt. So I don't know if we're going to have any business flying that deep into their territory, but they are inactive, just in case. So victory conditions. Detection and visual identification of the Recon flight. So we have to detect the Russian plane. Visual identification is, and it tells you the sections. We can look them up. I can already tell you, visual identification, you have to be within 4 hexes of the actual plane to visually identify it. So, and it's a dice roll, look up on a table, see if you succeed kind of thing. So that's what you got to do. That's step 1. Achieve full SAM acquisition. So our 2 Hawks have to achieve full acquisition of the flight, and that's going to be, dice rolls again, and conduct a successful BVR, air-to-air engagement. So that's step 3 here. So what you do is you attempt to do a BVR when you're within so many hexes from the enemy, and if the engagement occurs, resolve it as if it was normal BVR, but you just don't fire any shots. So when we get into the BVR stuff, we'll look into what that means. I mean, I'm sure there's a bunch of steps you do before you actually fire a shot, and we would do everything up to that point. Then we have to do standard air-to-air combat engagement. If the engagement occurs, resolve it as if it's normal air-to-air combat, but neither player fires any shots. So I think what we're going to do is we're going to actually conduct an actual BVR attack. And heck, we'll even roll to see if we hit them, and do damage. It's just that it's pretend, right? Because this is Cold War stuff. And then here, we do the air-to-air combat. If we accomplish all 4 of those tasks, we win. Otherwise, they win. Okay, so that's the scenario itself. Now, the actual rule book has a scenario setup section. So the weather phase we skip because there's nothing impacted by the weather. And it'll say, it has a preset condition. And if you roll on the table, blah, 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 it might impact ordnance selection, things like that. The ground planning phase, which player sets up first? So it was NATO. Then the first player chooses, if allowed in the scenario, an air defense status. Then the player determines the location for your SAMs, your dummy AA, early warning radars, etc. We don't get to choose because this scenario told us where everything gets located. The only thing we get to choose is where to put our tanks. Then the second player does the same, and they don't get to set up anything. Everything from them was automatically predetermined. So you would expect that in scenario 1, that they're not giving us a big leash, right? We don't have a lot of leeway. All right, so next. AAA setup. If there was scenario provided or purchased AAA concentrations, they can be placed. And may also use scenario provided AAA points to upgrade printed inherent AA concentrations. And it's just telling you where you must set up your stuff. We don't get to choose any of this. I'm pretty sure right here, all ground units have some organic AAA, but the quantity and quality varies by type. When setting up, player must roll to see if some units received additional capability. When setting up ground units, consult the ground unit organic AA table. For each ground unit, note the type of inherent barrage each unit has, light or small arms, and then roll a die. So let's figure out where this is. I have no idea where the heck this table is. And usually GMT is very good at telling you like which player aid or whatever, but it doesn't in this case. So I'm going to assume it's player aid 1, but let me pause and see if I can find it. Okay, I found it. Some of this is starting to make more sense. First of all, let's talk about the rules like on a normal scenario. So our armor is on the ground. It's a small arms AAA. So what that means is the actual hex that it sits on, and that hex only, it can set up some of its own flak, okay? So it has the inherent anti-air capability, but only in the hex that it's located in. What you're going to do is you're going to roll a die, and if you're playing as a US or for FRG, Belgium, you're going to have the Gepard, which is what we're doing for this scenario. So if I get a 1 to a 3 on my die roll, then my small arms gets upgraded to a Gepard, okay? So the dice on this are 10-sided, so it's actually a low chance. And what's crazy is I don't think there's an actual token to identify that you got it. So like, for example, I rolled a 9, which would mean that we would stay small arms. However, we talked about this already. And by the way, that was player aid card 3, not 1. So I was dead wrong there. We talked about this, that the, oh gosh, it was written somewhere. Oh, right here. So it's saying on May 15th or 17th, roll for Gepard capability. Remember? That's what it means. You're going to roll against that table. So May 15th, May 16th, May 17th, we're going to roll each time to see if it has that capability. So it doesn't mean it automatically has it. It just means we're going to roll for it. So that at least that allows that to make more sense. So good thing we're going through this, right? And this is what I mean by the rulebook gets really wonky because, you know, first of all, how am I going to remember if I have like 10 ground units that this one has Gepard and the other ones don't? I mean, that's a little ridiculous. I think what you would have to do is, because it actually is numbered, like it's the 16th division or something. Are they numbered? No, they're not. They're not numbered at all. It just says armor. So I don't know. I honestly don't know. Like maybe you'd have to write down the location. But maybe, you know, that's what your log is for. That's all I have to say about that. So you can see there's a lot of setup. There's a SAM setup, and then we did set up an EWR. So let's make sure we did everything there. Their setup is indicated in the scenario unless otherwise specified. So they told us where to set it up, so we don't get to choose. They can only be in mountain hexes if there's a road. So there's some, you know, rules for where they go, but none of that applies to us for this scenario. ISR phase we're skipping because there wasn't one, but it would explain everything. And then look, it goes through AAAs and SAMs again. You see how like there's like all these rules for AAAs and SAMs over and over and over again. It's really crazy. And then you do the ground deployment phase, and this is where you physically place the ground units of all types. Then the raid planning phase. This is the part where we don't do anything, but the Russians would. So one or both players generate raid targets. Okay, both players generate their flights using the units specified in the scenario in the order battle tables. If either player is allowed to adjust air units based on the scenario air defense status, then before generating any cap flights, add or subtract the number of cap flights from the scenario order of battle, blah, blah, blah. So you determine your targets, your ingress and egress hexes, determine ordnance loads, plan attack profiles, and plot the flight path. So there's a lot going on here for the raids, log sheets, etc. And this information is kept secret. So obviously there's not going to be much secret here, but they have, so see this little orbit thing? If you flip it over, it's a rally point. And so you can put those on the board, especially since we're just playing schizophrenic solitaire. But this stuff would be considered secret. And so what they have is, they gave us a couple of things here. The first thing they gave us is a flight log sheet. So this might look familiar because this is what came with the game. This is replaced by that. So this is just a little more comprehensive than what you see here, but a lot of the same information is there. The other thing is that if you look, this one, the SAM and AAA log sheet, on the back of those is an actual map of the mission, and this is where you can actually draw your flight path on here. You know, you can say you're going to go this way and then turn south and then whatever. We're not going to get that fancy because we don't need to. We're not playing secret mode, so there's nothing that we need to keep a secret. So we're just going to put rally points on. It would have been nice if they had some numbered rally points so we can, you know, like they do in a B-17 leader. That would have been nice, but we'll go ahead and set some up. And I have no idea what to do in this game. So first of all, I've already realized that the armor doesn't roll for the Gepard until May 15th. So by putting the armor all the way up on the front line like I did, the Russians are going to fly right over us. And then by the time I get my anti-air capabilities upgraded, they'll be long gone. So my location for the armor was probably very poor. So we're obviously entering from over here, and I'm going to have them exit the same place just for simplicity. So that orbit point is both the ingress and the entrance and the exit. I know they use ingress and egress. I'm never going to get that right, and it sounds too similar. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to fly right over or near that armor, but we're going to go to here. That's our first rally point because we need to take a picture of both of those. And then we need to take a picture of this one. And then we need to come and take a picture of this one. And then, oh crap. Sorry about that. My camera has a cord attached to it, and when I'm stretched all the way across the table like this, I end up pinching it with my body, and then off it goes. All right, so on our way in, we're gonna go, right over the north of the armor division, and on our way back, we're gonna just go south. So we'll meet up here and head back. It's just one plane. This is probably massive overkill, but that at least gives you the idea of what I'm planning on doing. There's absolutely nothing I can do to mitigate some of this stuff. I gotta get in and get out. So the one thing that's interesting about this game is these flight paths that I picked, they can't change. I'm not allowed to change my mind once I start playing. Like the raid targets, everything is preordained. Once I, draw it out. So if you're playing a 2-player game, what you drew secretly, you eventually reveal it because it's, you have to follow whatever your path was. Okay. So there are no actual targets. It's just we're taking pictures. And you have to be at medium altitude or lower to take the picture. So now you generate your aircraft flights for the scenario. Following the instructions on the scenario, order a battle. These are your tasks, right? So the cap task is what the NATO has, and then the Recon task is what the Russians have. You generate specific flights for each task, and it lists the mission, the number of aircraft. So, here, it gets explained right here. This is another location. Remember I said it wasn't in the rule book? Right there it is. Number of flights, X, and then the number of aircraft for flight is inside the braces. So there it is. It's explained right there. So well done, GMT. I just couldn't find it at first. So we sort of got ahead of ourselves, but this part is where it's saying to do all that stuff that we just did. So basically, it's telling us to get our token out and to mark that we have 2 in that flight, etc., etc. So then here, the pilot training levels come out. Do not roll a flight's aggression value first time. Then you do raid and task planning. You conduct detailed raid and task planning. All flight information is noted in the sheet, the paths, the targets, the initial points for the bomb runs, etc. So that's this section at the bottom. And then there's the seed phase, which we can skip for now. The early warning phase, this would happen. And I'm going to go ahead and end here. And I think we're going to go ahead and start this the next time we play. Because we're sort of getting into some of the gameplay here. But, well, no. This is still set up, I guess. Because in the air deployment phase, the first player sets up flights that start on the map. And for the first game turn, the second player then does the same. The scenario determines whether they both roll for early warning. Let's check. Yeah, all flights are starting undetected. So we actually skipped this. The air deployment. And then the radar phase. You may switch on any radar, etc., as desired, because you can start off with your radar shut off. Everything is going to be turned on both sides, so no worries there. So, so basically, it's saying that they do have to enter their aircraft. So let me put the U down. So we're going to have our flight and the two dummies. Which one's going to be which one's going to be the actual flight? The EE is the actual flight. The other two will be dummies, and so they're set up as so. And that's it. So that is set up. And then from here, we would actually start at phase 1 and go through the rules. So I will do that in the next video. But I hope you found this helpful. I know it's a little bit of a slog on the slow end, but some of it's I just don't want to miss anything. The other part of it is that you can see just how lengthy the rules are just to get through the scenario setup. And there's all these steps that we skipped just because this particular scenario doesn't allow for it. But oh my gosh, if you had it, just think of all the other stuff we still have to do. But that's why I picked this scenario. It's the perfect scenario. It lets you skip some of the rules so you don't have to absorb it all at once. But at some point we are going to have to reconcile and learn all this crap. But anyways, just a quick reminder is this guy against this guy, basically. And so this is going to be the guy doing the recon. This is going to be the cap that's going to try to intercept him. That's our task. And then the we have two Hawk, basically surface-to-air missiles. And this basically is just, like for example, if they're very high and then the range is 9, they get a -5 to their roll. So their chances of hitting is really low if the enemy, but remember the enemy has to go down to medium in order to take his picture. And so some of these Hawks, like one of them, he has to take a picture of both of the Hawks actually. So he's going to go absolutely next to them. So that's a range 1 at medium or better. So he's going to get a +1 to his rolls to get acquisition. So I don't know, there's a chance. But with the dice rolls and everything, you could still lose pretty badly. But anyways, okay, so I always ask this question, am I having fun? I mean, how much fun can you have setting up a game? Not a lot. The map is so extremely big, and that top right corner is killing me from a reaching across the table perspective. But I do like the fact that I can just get my rule books and lay them out on the table, because who cares? Because this whole part of the map's not being used. We're only using that part. That part's nice. Well, let's see. I mean, let's get in and get going. To me, the fun part of this is the combat. I do like the cat and mouse of the radars and how those work. I'm not saying that they're awful, but I am getting concerned that there's so many sections, like where you're messing with radar in section 1, and you're messing with it again in section 2, and you're messing with it again in section 3. I know it's simulating very high-tech stuff, at least for 1987. It was still high-tech back then. I know we're even more high-tech today, but it doesn't matter. I guess, jury's out is probably my best answer. I think the GMT component quality, is, at least for the cardboard chits, is very, very good. There's a big part of me that wants to get out the Vassal and maybe do this on the computer. But we're going to do it the old-fashioned way for now. And then maybe when we do future scenarios, we'll try to do that on Vassal. That'll make it... the thing with Vassal is I got it out, and it's really hard to find components. Largely because you have to know it by name. And I'm like, oh gosh, I don't know what. But see, by doing this with the actual cardboard in your hand, I'm getting familiar with the components now. I'm getting a lot more familiar with, oh, that's what this is. That's what this means. And by doing so, that's going to allow me to use Vassal a lot easier. The hard part about Vassal is you really got to know your components pretty well in order to be able to get your way around in Vassal and know what you're doing there. And that makes total sense. It's just that sometimes I would like to buy a game and just play it on Vassal without having to get out all the pieces. But I'm rambling. So I'll let you go. And as always, thank you for joining me at the table, and stay awesome and stay healthy and safe.